Of course, we're following earnings, beat on the top and bottom lines, but losses, $509 million. I know you say that'll narrow significantly in the next quarter, but the Delta variant is ripping up the playbook yet again. How are you seeing this play out on the roads? What markets are struggling the most?
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see the effect of Delta. Overall, we're really happy with the results. The top line beat. We knew that we needed to get more drivers out driving and couriers delivering because the demand was growing so quickly. So we leaned in to really increase courier supply and driver supply. And we added 420,000 couriers and drivers during the quarter between kind of June and February. Added another 110,000 with Postmates couriers as well. So we're really getting the earner force out there, and it's resulted in top line volumes that are very, very strong. And it's putting us on a path where Q3 losses are going to come down significantly. In Q4, we're going to hit EBITDA profitability as well. As far as the Delta goes, it's difficult to tell what the effect is, except for markets that have closed down. So Sydney, for example, has really shut down. The mobility business comes down, but our delivery business grows very significantly. And we net out, for example, in Sydney at 30% ahead of 19 volume. So overall, we have this great hedge between mobility and delivery. But when we look at city by city, you look at a New York, you look at a Paris, you look at an LA, et cetera, it's very hard to discern any patterns as far as Delta goes. We'll be watching very closely.
We're going to talk about Eats in a sec, but in terms of ride hailing, look, I've taken about 10 Ubers in the last month after not taking any for a year and a half. Sometimes it's there in 2 minutes, sometimes it's there in 20 minutes, sometimes, you're welcome, sometimes I get canceled on. So when do you foresee a more consistent balance of supply and demand?
So Emily, this is exactly why we really leaned in Q2. We wanted to get the Uber service back to predictable prices that you can expect, ETAs that you can expect. And ETAs and prices are coming back to historical levels. In states like Texas, Florida, et cetera, they're getting there faster. New York is in better shape. So it's really location by location, but we are consistently seeing ETAs and prices come down. I think that by September, October, November, you're going to get that magical Uber experience that you've always been used to. And we're leaning as a company to get there as quickly as possible.
And you're spending a lot to get drivers back out there, $250 million in the last quarter, but you've said you can taper incentives through the rest of the year. Lyft says they're amping up their incentives. So what makes you so confident you can win drivers back if you whittle yours down?
Well, because we're seeing the drivers come back. 420,000 came back in just a couple of months. And what we're seeing in July is, we started with incentives to really get drivers out there, but we're moving from essentially incentives to improving our onboarding processing. We reduced onboarding time by 90% with a new, much smoother onboarding process. We're reaching out to drivers who had stopped driving to resurrect them to get back on the road. That has been enormously successful as well. So in July, for example, we were able to taper incentives. We're targeting them much more specifically in the cities where we needed, when we needed. And at the same time, new drivers who signed up in July were up 30% month on month from June. So we're seeing the numbers, they're really encouraging. And we're not assuming that we're going to get any better, even though based on our technology and the systems that we have in place, we do think we can get more targeted and better in terms of onboarding drivers and couriers.
And obviously, profitability, really important milestone. You've promised you're still going to hit that before the end of the year. But what are the chances that Delta could shake that up too? What are the chances you don't hit that milestone?
The good news for us is that we have the hedge, right? So if mobility gets hit because of Delta, we see the delivery business growing. And we've also stated that the delivery business is going to get EBITDA profitable by Q4 as well. So we think we're reasonably protected. Obviously, it's a very, very uncertain environment. But we're the only company out there that's leading in mobility on a global basis outside of China, that's leading in delivery on a global basis outside of China. These businesses are now strengthening each other. And actually, customers who use both mobility and delivery account for nearly 50% of our gross bookings on a global basis. So if you stay home, you're going to use Eats. If you want to get out to a restaurant, you're going to use classic Uber. That is a strength and the unique strength that we bring.
Now, last time we spoke, you talked about how you've basically built another Uber. There's Uber ride sharing and Uber Eats. When you look 5 years out, which Uber is bigger? You're obviously expanding into grocery, you're expanding into instant delivery. But how do are the two Ubers still twins or something else?
Emily, you're making me choose between my kids. I'd much rather have them compete. We've got a team that's growing our Uber business. We've got a team that's growing our Eats business. They're going to compete with each other. And we'll see who wins. I do think that the delivery total addressable market, we've expanded delivery from just restaurants now to grocery. We're getting into alcohol delivery. We're delivering for Apple. We'll deliver an iPhone to your home. So the total addressable market for the delivery business is probably bigger. But as it relates to Uber, we're getting into transit. We're wiring up taxi cabs, two-wheelers, three-wheelers. So it's going to be a great competition, and I'm going to be pushing both of them to grow as fast as possible.
You are doubling down on freight. Bought Transplace last month, $2.25 billion. That makes software that helps companies manage their supply chains, manage logistics. What's the vision to own that? What's the vision to own supply and logistics?
Well, I think you hear all the time now how supply chain has become a problem for a lot of companies and is becoming a much more important part of how they operate. 50% of Uber Freight's customers are actually consumer packaged goods makers, brands, et cetera. The same brands that we're delivering for, Corner Shop into your home. So we think with Transplace, we're going to be helping these brands actually manage their supply chain. With Uber Freight, we are connecting them to the shippers that can get the food or the water or the sodas or the beer from the warehouse to the store. And with Eats, we can get that soda or food from the store to the home. There's no one else that is building this kind of end-to-end logistics infrastructure powered by machine learning that understands where you are, when you are, and can make that chain the most efficient. That's really what we're building. And the Transplace team is just dynamite. So we would be very happy to have them as part of the Uber family.
You've pushed back your return to work. You're mandating vaccines for your corporate employees. You did have a COVID exposure at a board meeting. And look, the Delta is real. It is scary. You're not mandating vaccines for drivers. How are you thinking about this? Instacart CEO just told me they're debating it for shoppers. Is it at all on the table?
These are subjects that we talk about all the time. I do think that it's different when you're talking about employees or spending 8 hours a day in an office. And remember, for us, the big issue is if we mandate it for drivers, I think we'd have to mandate it for riders as well. And when you have a company that has essentially 100 million riders and drivers using the service every single month, I don't think that to have a company have the power to mandate vaccinations over 100 million people who are moving around is probably the right call. So we are going to work with governments based on government mandates, local mandates. We're going to follow them. And at the same time, we're pushing very, very hard to help drivers, couriers, riders get vaccinated, often providing vaccinations for free or transportation to vaccinations for free. So we're absolutely doing our part.
We are coming up on your 4-year Uberversary, so congratulations on that. The New York Times recently called you the dad of Silicon Valley, a stark contrast to your predecessor. As you look out on the next 4 years, from a cultural perspective, what are your priorities, especially when it comes to diversity and building a more inclusive workforce? What's the company and the culture that you want to build?
Well, I think the kind of company that we want to build are full of entrepreneurs who want to have impact and impact in the broadest way, but in real life, right? The service that we are building essentially will allow people to go anywhere, get anything into their homes, and millions of people earn. That comes with a lot of responsibility. So we want entrepreneurs who want to build, but they want to build responsibly. And diversity is a big part of that. We need to have that diversity in our workforce because we certainly have that diversity in our earner base and our courier base. And ultimately, that is going to help us build a better product. But it's all about impact in the real world. And we got a lot of people who are incredibly excited to build our Go Get vision.